Hello and welcome to this week's Craft and Chat. I'm Amanda Fowler and I'm live here on Facebook, the Inspiring Inking Facebook page, and also on YouTube. Thank you so much if you are joining me live or watching the replay. Can we do a quick sound and light check? Life is interesting here currently because the BT OpenReach people are changing all kinds of pipes and cables and stuff, but it looks like I've got normal service. So I won't know until the point at which you tell me that you can see me. So if you could, that would be amazing. I also need to let you know that the doorbell may well go. Firstly, I've got a UPS delivery. Why does this not surprise us? Yeah, I've got a UPS delivery coming, probably this afternoon, and the guys doing the cabling may well knock on the door. And I did say I can't talk to you between 2 and 3. I'm busy. But you know, we'll see. Awesome. Okay, so Margaret's here and Chris and Elizabeth, and we had a sound and light check. Thank you, Chris, on Facebook and YouTube. Awesome. So how are we this week? Have you been busy? Do let me know in the comments what you've been up to at the weekend. I'm trying to think what we it kind of flashes past, doesn't it, really? Trying to think what we're doing. Oh, we were chainsawing huge bits of wood at the weekend. We have a log burner. I'm sure I've mentioned it before. And we often kind of come across or get brought, or somebody asks us to come and move some big hunks of timber. But they need to be chainsawed to the right size so they'll actually fit into the log burner. So yeah, so Brian and I were doing that. I don't know. That's awful. I have no idea what else we did at the weekend. Oh, we sorted out some of the stuff for some shows. So I'm doing some local shows over the summer, which I'm very excited about. So we did that as well. But yeah, it kind of obviously just disappeared. Janet, thank you. Loud, clear, and perfect picture. Let's keep our fingers and toes crossed. And Ali says it wouldn't be a proper live if the doorbell didn't go. Exactly. That's how you know it's live. Oh, Christmas cards. Elizabeth's been doing Christmas cards and ironing. Ironing should be banned. I don't iron. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. Yeah, I really don't iron. It has to be, well, invariably, it's a very rare occasion. When I've got something that has to be ironed, I will iron it. But Brian has always done his own ironing. So yeah. And as soon as the kids were big enough to do their own ironing, then they did their own ironing as well. I sound dreadful. It's one of those jobs that I just think, why? It's like, oh dear. You know, sometimes I say things on my lives and I don't know, I worry that one day you're just going to go, Amanda's world of crazy is due two crackers. I hate opening and closing curtains. It drives me insane. It's like, why? because you have to close them at night and open them in the morning. And it's just such a tedious job. So one day, I'm going to have a gizmo or a gadget or something that I can just press a button and all the curtains will close, and press a button and all the curtains will open. I don't even know if such a thing exists. It probably does. But it's just anyway. Oh dear. Hi Sue. Hope you're doing okay. And in Suffolk, Margaret had a pleasant day walking around the grounds of Blenheim Palace. Now that is one of the places I haven't been to. So that's good. I'm pleased you had a lovely day. Ooh, Chris had a social weekend, lots of cuppa meets. I hope there was plenty of cake. And Janet's saying, I'm such a lucky lady to have such a good husband. Well, my husband is an ex-military man, and when we were courting, that's a very long time ago, I asked, he was getting ready for, I don't know, a parade or something, and I said, could I help? And he said, could I iron the shirt? And I made such a bad job of it. I didn't know. I was very young. I didn't know how to iron a shirt. I was just trying to be helpful. And I made such a bad job of it. And he was just appalled at how bad my ironing was. And I said, well, that's okay. You'll just have to do your own. And bless him, he has ever since. He's very good at it. And he likes to have his iron shirt. So that's good. It's cold up north, said Elizabeth. It warmed you up. Anne said she can see a rainbow from her window. Yeah, it started raining here a few minutes ago, actually. It hasn't carried on, but a little bit. Hi, Jen. Good to see you. Ali said, it'd be fascinating to spend an hour in my head, not sure that she could cope with being in there any longer. Honestly, Ali, no. Seriously, yeah. It's a very confusing place. It is really strange, and I do have the habit of saying things that just kind of pop into my head, which was one of the reasons why I was never really sure doing lives was a good idea, because once I've said it, I've said it. But you know. Hello, Hilda. That's a new name, a new person. Where are you from, Hilda? Janet says it's a very good ploy to mess up the shirts. Well done, Janet. Bless you. I do not have the guile or the sense to have done that. I was just really bad at it. Yeah, I wasn't that clever. Oh, from New York. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I have some crafting today, obviously, for you. But I wanted to ask you a question that was kind of inspired by a purchase. So you see, I'm now remembering what I did at the weekend. We went out and about. We had some shopping to do. And we ended up in Dunelm. It's a department store for those of you that don't know it. And look what I found. Now, Tigger is one of my favorite characters. When I went to Disney, I queued up with all the children to have my photo taken with Tigger. I will bring the photo. It was very funny because of all these parents. So we'd gone as a Stampin' Up group, and the rest of the group had gone off to go on one of the rides. So I was just queuing up to see Tigger, and it was kind of like everyone was looking at me, going, kind of, "Where's the kid?" No, this is me. I am the kid. Anyway, Winnie the Pooh was very upset. I didn't want a hug or a picture with Winnie the Pooh. I only wanted a picture with Tigger. But many of you know I was a youth worker for a very long time. And Tigger was always the name I went by. So in a lot of youth groups, you don't use your actual name. You have a nickname or a given name, and Tigger was always mine, mainly because I used to bounce around a lot. Hilda says she's been here lots of times. Good. I've just never seen your name in the comments, Hilda. I'm sorry. It's lovely to have you. Lorraine's here as well. So the reason I bought this mug was because of what it says on the back. So can you read that? Life is not about how fast you run or how high you can climb, but how well you bounce. I think that's got to be a couple of sentences worth living by. It's all about how well you bounce. Resilience, which is good. So Chris says her dad was in the army and taught her how to iron shirts and press jackets and trousers. Very useful for the days when she wore smart suits for work. Yeah, that's good. And I think it's a skill, isn't it? My mother-in-law irons everything, just everything. And she just finds it really relaxing. So, I bake. When I want to relax, I bake. Hello, Donna. Good to see you. It's very cold in Oz. Well, you're going into winter, aren't you, Donna? We're apparently going into summer. I'm not entirely sure that's happening, but maybe it is. So anyway, so back to Little Tigger. Children's books. So within my mailing list and on my YouTube channel and my Facebook groups, we've got a lot of people with little people in their lives, whether that's children or grandbabies or uncles, aunts, all the kids. Lots of kids. So recommendations, book recommendations for little people. And by little people, I'm kind of, going like under 10, probably, something along those lines. So obviously Winnie the Pooh is kind of on my list. There's another book that, although we actually had the book, it was actually an audio book that we used to play. So because we lived a long way from my parents and Brian's parents, we did a lot of traveling in the car to go and visit them. So we had the audio book of The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark. And I couldn't tell you who wrote the book, but it's about a little owl who didn't like the dark, and the owl's name was Plop. Now, it's a really good story, but the best bit about the audiobook was Maureen Lipman narrated it. So she did all the voices. So she did Plop's voice and his mum's voice and all the people that he interacted with. Honestly, it's I could listen to it now. It's just so entertaining. Now, I think that it was then re-recorded with somebody else. I don't know who re-recorded it. But I did manage to get some CDs. That's kind of bizarre, isn't it? CDs. We had tapes in the car originally when the kids were little, but then we had audiobooks. So then obviously then we had CDs. So they're kind of my two top picks, and Peter Rabbit. Yeah. So let me know your recommendations whilst I just check on the comments. Elizabeth says we all have to bounce at times. Yeah, I think we do. Sue has a husband who irons. Thank you to the Royal Navy. Yeah, well, that's who I have to thank for my husband's ironing prowess, but she irons as well. Oh, you see, Donna's saying hit a high temperature of 14 degrees C today. Yeah, it's only about 15, 16 here. Oh, Captain Underpants, says Alison, for children who'll sit and listen. Where the Wild Things Are, says Anne. Oh, Sue's saying it's Jill Tomlinson that wrote The Owl Who's Afraid of the Dark. And Lorraine's recommending the Alfie and Rosie books by Shirley Hughes and Topsy and Tim. I Need a New Bum. Alison, it's a hilarious book, and also the Wonky Donkey. Yeah, we like that. Oh, the Gruffalo was a favorite, says Janet. You see, this is great. Keep the book suggestions coming. It's always nice to have options. Lots of options. Awesome. Right, I'm going to slurp my tea, then we're going to get on with the crafting. I'm surprised that the doorbell hasn't gone yet. Oh, I'm going on a bear hunt, said Ali. Yeah, that was one of my kids' favorites as well. I mean, they were both really voracious readers as little children. So Kim still is, Connor less so. So right, okay, let me. Oh, I suppose I ought to remind you what's going on with Stampin' Up currently. Perhaps. Firstly, I just need to say thank you so much for all of you who've registered for my scrapbooking workshop. I'm so excited. There are so many of you. I knew that you were interested, and I knew lots of people were kind of saying, yeah, tell me more about it. I'd like to find out more. But I launched the class last week, and yeah, lots of people have registered. So you've still got a couple of weeks. What day is it today? Oh, I should know, it's my husband's birthday today. It's the 11th, so a couple of weeks. I think it's a week on Friday. Booking will close. I will remind everybody. So make sure you get in for that. It's actually 3 classes in one. So we've got an introduction to scrapbooking, which is the first class, and then the 2 creative classes are on a Saturday a couple of weeks later. Basically, because you need photos. So I need to be able to talk to you about what you need, and then you can kind of get them printed and so on. So that's really, really exciting. So I'm super excited about that. And then the other thing is we've got a sale on at the moment. So any bundles that come with dies, so a stamp and a die bundle, has got an extra 10% off. So normally you get 10% off a bundle anyway, sort of compared to if you bought the stamps and the dies separately, but you're basically getting 20% off. You're getting an extra 10% off. And also for the Big Boss and the Little Boss. So the mini stamping, cut and emboss machine. Now you see why I call it a mini boss. And then the big stamp, cut and emboss machine, Big Boss. So you get an extra 10% off those as well. The kits for June craft along will be going out maybe the end of this week, maybe the beginning of next week. Kind of depends on whether or not this delivery comes today. And then, just so you know, we're doing Christmas in July for craft along. So that will you can qualify for that with your June orders. So make sure that you get your June orders in. Or as always, you can pop over to my blog. Let me just pop my blog address up. You know what it is. But anyway, www.inspiringinking.com. So on there, you can actually book for the craft along as well. If you want to book for the scrapbooking workshop, if you go onto my blog, there is a link there, but you don't book it on my blog. And I know that's a bit confusing, but Stampin' Up! Has certain rules around when you include like a full packet of a product, you have to have a separate invoice for it. So because included in the kit is a kit. Such confusing sentences, but because included in the kit is the travel journal kit, I have to do it this way. So I have to invoice you separately. That's just the rules, and I'm a rules girl through and through. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera around and let's get on with some crafting. Now, I'm really excited because I've been working on a list of all of the things I'm going to be doing for craft-alongs moving forwards. And making sure that there are a few more techniques and a few more other things. There's the my nail polish. Yeah, so today is a technique. Let me show you what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using the Enduring Beauty stamp set. Now, for this technique, whatever stamp set you pick, you need to pick something that has got a lot of open space. You don't want a stamp set that's solid and the image is kind of filled in. You want open space. You want a stamp set that you could color in. Okay, so I'm using Enduring Beauty. I'm using Best Family Ever for the happy birthday. And these little things here. So I've talked about these before. These are online exclusives and they're not in the catalogue. So they're just on the online store. And it's a set of 2 and they work really, really well with the Best Family Ever and the happy birthday and the thanks. But they're just a really nice size. and they cut. They've got like a nice little edge. So you've got a stitched edge on the flag ends, and then this one you've got a stitched edge, but it's like a line, and then like a little scallop on the edge of those ones as well. They're $11.25. And they're called Happy Little Things, but there is a stamp set that goes with it. So do kind of check out the stamp set. Anne saying the picture's a bit fuzzy. Is it just fuzzy for Anne, or is it fuzzy for everybody? I'm going to move my grid paper out the way, actually, because it could be that it's that's causing the fuzziness. And I will just put a piece of wood. There's no warning on my computer. Everything seems to be okay. All right, so we've got a few people who send the pictures fine. So, and sometimes if you come out of Facebook and go back in again, sometimes it can just be that Facebook's just being a pest. So for the first card, I'm using Blueberry Bushel cardstock and Night of Navy. So for this particular style, because I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this whitewash. For this particular style, you want two colors that are similar. So a slightly lighter color cardstock and a slightly darker ink. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I start, this is what I'm using today. So this is the Stampin' Up! White craft ink. So in the catalogue, it is, let me just pull it up. Ink, ink, ink. It's on page 126. So it's the ink pad and the refill. Now the pad, when you order the pad, it comes with a refill. Okay, so when you order a pad, you get a refill as well, but you can just buy the refill on its own, and it's $6.75. Now this is the only pigment ink we have, and it's really cool because it stays white even on dark colors. So if you've ever wanted to stamp, I don't know, snowflakes, for instance, on dark card, craft ink will do that. It's really, really cool. But what we're going to use it for today is a watercolor wash. So I've got an acrylic block, and you're just going to put a drop, and let me just show you, put it on, because it's really, can you see how that's pulling? It's really sticky. It's sticky and gloopy. It's not like our normal inks. And I've got a watercolor brush, and I'm just going to squeeze a bit of water, a couple of drops of water, and just going to make it into paint. Now you'll see in a minute, I'm going to do the same with some colored ink as well. And you can do this with all of the 50 Stampin' Up! Colors and the white, because they're all water-based. So you can add water and you can paint with them. Good, and fixed that. That's awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my stamp, ink it up. It's a big stamp, so I'm taking the ink pad to the stamp, inking it up really well. Photopolymer stamp set. So I'm using my stamping mat, and I'm actually, I'm going to stand up. It is a humongous stamp. Ta-da! How cool is that? That's really pretty. So you could just leave it like that. But what I am going to do is bring in one I stamped half an hour ago. You don't have to leave it half an hour. But I would recommend that you leave it a little while. You don't want this ink to be wet. And then what we're going to do is paint. So I am just going to paint the flowers. I'm not going to paint the leaves. And I don't want you to worry because I'm actually going to paint over the top of some of these the lines. So there are 3 buds and 5 flowers on this. And I'm just filling in the flowers. Now, painting, watercoloring is very therapeutic. Certainly for me, it's very therapeutic. I can just lose myself in hours for hours just doing this. And actually, you'll really enjoy doing this. It's very meditative. So by all means, stamp several and then paint. Now, I appreciate you can't see that close up, but if I bring this up, can you see how that's filled in that image? And the darker blue has come through it. Now, you don't want your brush to be, for this particular way of doing it, you don't want it to be too wet because you don't want to wash away the blue ink. So it is just a case of taking your time and give it a go and see what kind of ratio of water to ink works best for you. You know what's going to happen now. I'm going to stop talking because I'm painting. I do wish I had watercolor painting skills. My mum can watercolor. She does beautiful paintings. I don't have skill in that area, but I can fill in a stamped image. Now these 3 main flowers here, where they've got the center bit of the flower, I'm not going over that with the paint, with the ink. I'm just kind of going around it. And you can see each time I'm sort of doing an area, or each time I'm kind of picking up the ink, you'll see that it's a bit more opaque and a bit lighter. You will get shade and tone as you go. It's easier to do what I'm doing, which is kind of move the cardstock around. What you don't want to be doing is putting your hand on a wet bit. And you can go back over areas as well. And I don't want you to look at it and go, ooh, that's a bit blotchy, Amanda. What are you doing? Trust the process. Trust the process. It will all work in the end. Now I'm going to show you this technique 2 different ways. This is absolutely the fastest and the simplest. It works really well on dark card. You need, I say dark card, you need to be able to see the image once it's stamped, but it can be quite deep. Linda! It's my bestie from Australia. For those of you that don't know, Stampin' Up is in Australia, and a very, 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 very long time ago, Linda might remember the year, I don't remember the year, we were at Stampin' Up convention and incentive trip in Utah, and I met Linda. And since then, every year on incentive trips, we meet up, and it's awesome. I'm kind of thinking you ought to be in bed. Oh dear. I don't know. I don't know what time it is. My brain can't compute the math. Okay. So look. How cool is that? So I'm just going to go over a little bit more in a few areas that are quite light. Now you can keep going over and keep going over and keep going over. Just give it a little bit of time to dry. But I want to show you the finished one so that I can move on to the next one. So here's one I made earlier. Ta-da! There you go. So I've used blueberry bushel for the stamping layer. Then I've done a white layer and a blueberry bushel card. I've used the stamped off image, so it's Night of Navy here, and the sentiment, I used those teeny tiny dies and I've just chopped it off. Oh, Margaret, thank you. It's just such a cool technique. Now I'm using a water brush. You don't have to use a water brush. The reason I use water brushes is because I'm so messy. We've talked about this before. And if I've got a cup of water on the desk, it is never, ever going to stay on the desk. I'm always going to knock it over. So I use water brushes. But if you've got like a little paintbrush and some water, you'll be able to do that. Lorraine's loving this. Oh, Stella, you're here too. Lorraine's looking forward to having a go. Awesome. And that's why I do this. That's why I'm here, because I want you to do some crafting. Okay, so next up, I've done a bit of prep work. So this is the same stamp, but I have heat embossed it. Now I'm going to talk about heat embossing for a minute. And the first thing that I will say is we are getting wow embossing powders. We currently do not have any embossing powders, which is frustrating, to say the least. But I've got my old stash, and that's what I've used. So it's really pretty. but I want to talk to you about heat embossing. The first thing is, and this is what you need for heat embossing. This is the best ink for heat embossing. If you don't have one, you need one. This one's a fairly clean one in the world of my Versamark ink pads. They start out cream, but this is like a magnet for dust and glitter and all kinds of stuff. It doesn't matter if it's not pristine, if you're heat embossing with a color. So Linda's saying it was Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was 2013. Blimey, that's 11 years ago. And she's in bed because it's 20 to midnight. And Donna's saying, yeah, 20 to midnight. See your night owls. Blimey, I will have been asleep by about 3 hours by then. Okay, so heat embossing. It's a very cool technique. When you get embossing powder, I always decant it into these kind of Tupperware containers, and I have a couple of things. So the first thing, it's always a bit messy in here, is I have a spoon in there. I have a full pot of embossing powder inside my big pot of embossing powder. And the reason for that is if at some point the whole thing goes on the floor, I know you don't believe I'm that messy, but truly I am. Then I've still got some left. And I also use a big container, big enough to get a card front in, because basically, and I'm just going to do this now just to show you, basically this is what I do. I hold it in there and I dump the embossing powder on it. Okay, and then I flick it. Because it's faster. It's faster than sprinkling it on and then picking it up and putting it back in the pot. And I want things to be quick. Okay, so let's get a piece of paper. And this. So this time we're going to do exactly the same with the whitewash ink, but with this one, I said don't make it too wet, okay? Because what then happens is the color bleed, the original color bleeds too much. But for this technique, you want it a bit more soggy, because it flows better. And for this one, I am going to go over the whole card. So I'm doing the leaves and everything. So I'm just going to add a bit more water to that. And what happens, because it's a bit, it's wetter, because you've got these embossed lines, what it actually does is the embossing line resists the ink and it kind of pools, which actually that is another technique, a watercolor wash technique, all of its own. We might do that another time. I'll add it to the list. But I just love this. It's just really straightforward to do. You just have to take a minute to make sure you can tell which which bits are gaps and which bits are leaves and flowers. But you'll see how much faster this is compared to when I was doing it on the blueberry bushel there. And you need to get a little bit in those stems as well. There we go. That's another petal there. I'm going quiet again. Sorry. Really hard to paint and talk. I just kind of go off into a world of my own. Okay, nearly done. Okay, so that's just one coat. Now, what I would say is you might be tempted to give this a blast with a heat gun. Don't do that. What will happen is your heat embossing will flatten out, and if there is any ink on the heat embossing, it will kind of set, and you don't want it to do that. So you need to let it dry naturally, and then it will look something like this. And then once you've done it, once you've let it dry, you're going to go again. So you're going to do it for a second time. Now, I like this as it is. It's really nice. But you will see here, once you've done it a second time, the white is much more vibrant. Okay. So let me just see if there are any questions. Oh, good night, Linda. Donna saying, does this work with all pigment inks? Donna, I don't know. Not this technique in this way, I don't think. Because what we're doing by putting white on it, you'll see in a minute, I'm actually going to go over with coloured ink in a second. And the white gives it a really good base. So I don't think so, not in the way that you're thinking. So let me just pop that there. So this is dry now, dryish, dryish. And I've got my two re-inkers here. So this is Garden Green and Petunia Pop. Now, you don't have to use the re-inkers. You could just take your ink pad, smoosh it on an acrylic block, and then get your water painter. Now, again, this time, because now we've already got ink on this, you don't want to make it too wet, because all that's going to happen is the white will mix with whatever color. So you'll end up with a really pale shade. And although that can look interesting, it's not necessarily what you're aiming for. You're aiming for the color to kind of pop. So you don't want anything too wet, but equally you don't want a huge amount of color. Because you don't want it to be flat. You want it to have tone. So I've just got a little tiny bit on my brush like that, and I'm just going to go over one of the leaves like so. And I'm not actually putting any more ink on my brush. I'm just carrying on, and I'm going to see how many leaves I can actually do. Now, let me show you. See if it comes up. It's actually getting paler because it's lifting some of the white ink up. So if you need to go back in, it starts to get too pale, and go back in and get another bit of ink. And it will mean then that each leaf has a slightly different shade. And obviously make sure that you do your stems as well. So can you see how pale that is? You bring that up. Can you see how pale that is? Basically, there was barely any green left, and it's lifted up the pigment ink. So I'm just going back over it again, just to give it a bit more tone. And I'm just going in and dotting around this the veins on the leaves. And again, what that will do, it will just add a little bit more texture and interest to the leaves. Can you see? So I can just see another stem there. And quite often you just need to lift it up, look at it. If you can spot a few little white patches, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you can go back in and add a bit more colour. Okay, let me pick that up. Thank you, Anne. You're saying it's really pretty, it's really delicate. So now when I was making my sample for this, I went for petunia pop because I wanted quite a vibrant colour. I realised that it was a bit too vibrant. So I'm actually only going to be putting a tiny amount on because look, it is quite bright. So I'm going to start with the buds first, because then I can kind of figure out what the tone is going to be like. And they're kind of the smallest little bits. And then I'm going to go in with a tiny bit more colour. But can you see how much darker that is? And then I'm just going to go round the stamen in the center of the flowers. Because I don't want it to be too bright. And you can see as I go, that was my first, second, third, fourth. It's getting lighter and lighter as I go. So a tiny bit more colour. And then I'm just going to kind of come out from that center and fill out a petal and fill out another petal and another one. And again. And then I'm going to move on to a different flower and just do a few more petals. And the reason I'm doing this is so that the colours kind of all meld into one. If you just work on one, you'll get quite a static colour. But if you work on several all at once, it changes the tone a bit. And you'll be able to see, let me lift it up, that you've got softer bits and lighter bits. So let's go for a bit darker now. And if you think of flowers out in the world, they have different amounts of light and shade on them. So, you know, even if it's flowers on one bush, they will all be slightly different. Now, I haven't actually said anything about the brush that I'm using. So I've got a mixture of the new water painters and the old aqua painters. But what they've got in common is it's the fine tip. Can you see? And the tip kind of comes to a point. And that's really important when you're doing this kind of work. You don't want something that's sort of rounded and blobby, for want of a better technical term. You don't want it to blob everywhere. You want to be able to precisely get into where you're going without it running everywhere. Right. Okay. There you go. That's got a bit of white ink there in the center. Let me just lift that off. Now, what I would recommend, like I said before, I recommend you make several and then do all the painting. And then you can kind of go back to it and add your colouring and your shading. So let me just push those all to one side so I can put together one I made earlier, because I want to sort of show you the finished. So if I show you this one, so you can see this is quite light. This is a bit brighter. So when I did this, like I said, the peony was brighter than I thought it was going to be. So actually that rose is that way up. Yeah. So you can see how different you can make those tones. So I've done a happy birthday. I've used that same little die set and I've heat embossed it in gold. I've got some gold foil. I thought I would just mount that onto a bit of gold foil, and isn't it amazing what a little bit of gold foil can do to your world? Heat embossing is one of those things that I love to do. It's not something that's easy to do when I'm live, basically because it's so noisy. It's really, really annoying. But now I've sort of thought about, well, I could just heat emboss it first. Then you'll probably be seeing more of this. So let me get a... I'm looking for mini dots. Hooray! Look, I've got all those and only one set of mini dots. There we go. So let's just... Ooh, this is kind of like... Actually, do you know what? I'm going to put that right across the middle. That's shocking, but I think that works. So, which do we like the best? The blue one, obviously. No, it's such a cool technique, isn't it? Oh, Lorraine's saying it reminds her of cherry blossoms. Yes, absolutely. It is super, super cool. Really easy. Like I said, all you need is the white pigment ink, the craft ink, and a paintbrush. And you can just use your normal stamping. And then with this one, obviously, just make sure you've let it dry first. That is the really important thing. But other than that, yeah, they're really straightforward. Donna's saying she likes them because they're the same but different. That's a really good answer. Love that. Okay, so I will be back here next week at 2 o'clock UK time. And I shall look forward to seeing you then. Make sure to get your orders in. Don't miss out on the bundles offer. I have noticed that some bundles are actually going out of stock. And the downside of that is we don't have back orders anymore. So it means then chances are we're not going to get them back in again before the special offer finishes. So as always, with all things Stampin' Up, just make sure that you get your order in as soon as you can. Thank you. I'm so pleased that you've enjoyed this. Techniques are one of the things that I adore doing. And like a few weeks ago when we were talking about using your markers to ink up stamps, I think there are so many stamping techniques that, you know, we perhaps have done before or maybe new to us completely. And I just think it's a really great way of extending the life of your stamps, using them in a different way. So you can see lots more techniques from me, and I will be crafting back here live next week. So I look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Goodbye.